Network's family of shows. Available everywhere podcasts.
Hello everyone and welcome back into the GSMC Dead Ball Sports Podcast, and for our fourth segment of today's show, we transition yet again from sport to sport here, from baseball to the NBA. We, for the first time ever on the show, I believe, are talking about an interconference matchup between two title contenders in the NBA this season. The Denver Nuggets taking on the New York Knicks will leave on the road tomorrow night in a game between two teams that one being on track, the other trying to get back on track, but both believe that they can be true title contenders come postseason. The New York Knicks, let's talk about them first, seemingly on the right track to do that, coalescing at the exact right time. They're within one game of the second place Boston Celtics, who are really faltering here in the midway point of the season. Ultimately, let's focus on them. Let's focus on the versatility they have. Let's focus on the stubbornness of Coach Tom Thibodeau to keep that core five on the court for as long as possible, no matter what. And the heart they bring, no pun intended, as Josh Hart is one of the starters on this team, to every single game in this 5-game winning streak. Last night, they proved that they might be a team to be reckoned with if they even get to the NBA Finals, because that was a prospective NBA Finals matchup last night between them and the Grizzlies, and they absolutely obliterated them. Mikal Bridges really coming into his own, truly one of the better free agent acquisitions this offseason in the NBA. Ultimately, I do feel like if any team is similar to the Knicks in terms of how many questions are going to be asked about them come postseason time and how they kind of would like to play a little bit, but not necessarily in too many similar ways, it's the Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets are definitely a team that center around one player, but also are kind of reliant on the same philosophies as the Knicks, in that they really need that one player to show up in the minutes that he plays in order for them to be successful. But ultimately, the Nuggets' plan is not working as well as it was, say, 4 years ago, or even the championship year. Ultimately, Nikola Jokić is still playing like an MVP caliber player, and if he continues to play like that, they still have a fighting chance no matter what happens to them, no matter what opponent they face. But they're now they're staring down the barrel of a 3-game losing streak potentially. Should they lose this game, they lost to the Bills in embarrassing fashion on the road. Jokić, though, still putting up a triple-double. So, even though this team is struggling, they still have one of the best players in the NBA to help compensate for their struggles. But right now, they are 4th in the Western Conference and looking for a signature win. But ultimately, I feel like the Knicks are catching fire, because my worry about this Knicks team was that they wouldn't necessarily coalesce at certain points of the season where they needed to. And this specific part of the season is crunch time for a lot of these title contenders. And I really worried that the Knicks out of play, especially under Tom Thibodeau, would catch up to some of these guys like Bridges and Towns, who may not have been used to it on their other teams. But they have fit in like a glove. They're really being proactive in terms of what they can bring to this squad, and really papering over the cracks in the Knicks' depth that a lot of people don't want you to talk to them about. But ultimately, the reason why this game is still even, in my opinion, is because the Nuggets are getting asked the same questions, but they also have the ultimate better player in this matchup. I feel like no matter what, Nikola Jokić is going to, by hook or by crook, keep his team in a lot of games, even if they're overmatched. And I feel like, even though this isn't Jamal Murray's best season, he's starting to rev it up a little bit. He's starting to shoot at least 50% from the field, average 21 and 7, not bad, but certainly not the stats you would love to see from a second option on that Denver Nuggets team. And ultimately, yes, they also have a lot of depth questions, but I feel like Michael Malone, at the very least, knows that he needs to get production out of some of these guys at his bench. And I feel like he is starting to rely on them a little bit more so that they don't feel overwhelmed in certain big moments down the stretch. So I feel like this Denver Nuggets team, even though they're in the midst of a little bit of a losing streak, have the ability to amp it up. They just need to rely on these younger guys really amping it up a little bit down the stretch here. It's not just going to be Jokić and a group of 4 guys on a court. It's going to be key contributors popping up in certain moments. The Nuggets, to me, are kind of like the Celtics of the Western Conference right now. They have the players, they have the talent, they're just not clicking outside of their core players, right? All their core players are playing pretty well, so to speak, but ultimately they're not getting key contributions from other players in critical moments. And that's the difference between them and some other elite teams that I feel at this point are primed and ready to go come postseason time. And if you were to start the postseason now, would probably carry over their record, their form as well. And one of those teams would be the New York Knicks. Because looking at the Knicks, in this 5-game winning streak, they dominated the Kings, one of those teams who are hot and cold in the Western Conference but can on their day beat you as well 2 days ago. Then, last night, dominated the Grizzlies. So on this 5-game winning streak, it's not like they're playing any slouches. Yes, they had a really weird close game against the Nets, but it's a crosstown rivalry thing, so not necessarily to worry about that. But ultimately, they're proving that they can put together dominant performances and most ultimately, from their core 5, get a lot of solid production. It's not just Brunson now who has to carry this team. It's Brunson and Bridges and Towns and OG. Maybe you can throw Precious in there on his day. But ultimately, now they're getting more contributions from the starting 5, whereas last year, saw the starting 5 were gassed because of how long they had to play because of Tom Thibodeau's philosophies. But ultimately, the reason why I'm excited to see this Knicks team amp up is because look at the Eastern Conference. Look at who they might need to face in the postseason. If it started today, or maybe even down the stretch. The Cavs ultimately are the team to beat. They're playing like perhaps the best team, not just in the Eastern Conference, but in all of basketball. They've proven it against the elite Western Conference teams. But then after that, the Celtics are faltering. I like the Magic. They're certainly one of the better defensive teams in the Eastern Conference. But I don't necessarily know how proven they'll look come postseason time. They certainly have players that can hurt you. But they're kind of like the Knicks last year, where they might be relying a little bit too much on guys like Paolo and Franz Wagner down the stretch. And then you look at the play-in teams that only started on the Indiana Pacers, really declining a lot this year. Some other teams that might end up at the play-in tournament at the very least, the Bulls. I don't know how attractive they will look in the postseason should they get there. So a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference are getting asked questions of them. And the Knicks have proven in this stretch they can beat the quote-unquote elite of the East, but also dominate some teams in the Western Conference who a lot of people are considering to be your title challengers. The Grizzlies could definitely be a team that goes in a hot run in the postseason, gets to the NBA Finals. And potentially on the stretch, they get a chance to beat up on teams like the Thunder and Rockets as well. So that's what makes me excited and a little bit optimistic if I'm a Knicks fan about this run of 4. And if I'm a Nuggets fan, I wouldn't necessarily be panicking right now because I feel like the Nuggets are a team that feel as if they're tensing up at the wrong moments, but still know they have a trump card in Jokić. And I feel like if they get over that mindset, if they realize that they can contribute around Jokić, that Jokić isn't the end-all, be-all on both sides of the court, I feel like that's when the Nuggets can shine. because Jokić is the best player, but he also does very well is make sure he distributes the wealth. He's not a selfish superstar by any means necessary. And this Nuggets team has to buy into that identity and say, hey, if our best player is someone selfish to the point that he wants to succeed, we have to step up to accommodate for that. So that's what makes this Nuggets team so intriguing. They have that mindset in the back of their minds that if they can just step up around Jokić and play around him, then he won't necessarily have to carry them to victory all the time. So that would make this game so interesting. But I'm going to have to go with the Knicks on form here. They won 7 of 10 since. They had lost 3 of 4 actually to start the year. And how having won 7 of 10 puts themselves in a good spot to usurp Boston as the second place team in the Eastern Conference standings. And I feel like if they maintain this pace, they might as well chase down Cleveland too. And if the Knicks are able to do that, I would say they're the ultimate favorite to come out of the Eastern Conference this year. Because you can ignore the factors of depth. You can ignore the factors that Bridges and Towns haven't played for this Knicks team in the postseason and haven't experienced that. But I feel like this Knicks team has proven that they're not just a team in the East looking to take advantage of that weak conference. They're doing it to teams like Memphis as well. And they might be able to do it tomorrow night against the Nuggets too and take advantage of this Nuggets semi-losing streak or mini-losing streak for the Nuggets and take advantage of the fact that right now the Nuggets are not performing around their own superstar. So give me the Knicks in this one. Funnily enough, let me see my notes here. The Nuggets had won 8 of 9 between January 9th and 24th. They had a good start to the year. And in every single matchup have only lost 1 against the Knicks in recent memory. Early on this season, another big dismantling of a Western Conference team by the Knicks. Early in the season, though. So, yes, the Nuggets have had a good stretch of form. But right now, the Knicks are perhaps on the best stretch of form in the entire NBA right now. And have the advantage of playing in the weaker conference. So, look for the Knicks to really come out there and prove to Denver that they are the more complete team. And while I wouldn't start panicking if I'm a Nuggets fan now, I will panic if this is a trend where Jokić has to carry the Nuggets rather than the Nuggets performing around him, because that's a scary proposition for a lot of Nuggets fans to cope with. But coming up next on our show to conclude, we look at another CFP team here in terms of what could be next for 2025, and it is the Oregon Ducks. If you're an Oregon Ducks fan, stick around for this. We'll be right back to talk about it after this short break.